Hi everyone! Today we're making these adorable clay snowmen. They would make gorgeous decorations and they would also make fantastic gifts because they would last many Christmases and you can make them to whatever theme, hobby or occupation your recipient would like. Be sure to check out all my other Christmas videos and subscribe if you haven't already. First up, I'm making the papier-mache paste out of PVA glue, water and flour. I don't usually measure it, I just keep adding flour until it's the right consistency. Then using newspaper, I papier-mache'd all my balloons. I used different sized balloons just so that they would have a slightly different shape. If you're making 3 snowmen as I have done, you'll need 3 large balloons and 6 small balloons. I use the small balloons for the upper part of the body and the head, and larger balloons for the lower part of the body. Make sure you have 4 or 5 layers of papier-mache around your balloons. It's really important that they're rock hard as you'll be sculpting clay around them. Place the larger balloons on top of cups which I left overnight. That way the part of the balloon in the cup would still be wet and the top part hardened. Cut the balloons and push the wet part inwards so the bottom is nice and flat and your snowman will stand up straight. Attach the top part of the body to the lower part using hot glue or papier-mache. You can check out lots of YouTube tutorials on how to make your own paper clay, or you can purchase some air dry clay as I'm using. Lightly wet any dry surfaces with your fingers before adding the clay. Use your wet fingers or clay tools to smooth the clay out. Once the clay is dry, we'll be sanding it to get it a little bit smoother, but personally I don't want it to be too smooth as it looks more like snow when it's a bit bumpy. It takes 48 hours for the clay to dry completely, but after leaving it to dry overnight you can add the bottom part of the snowman. Add more clay to the parts you think need to be a bit smoother. When the snowman bodies have dried, you can lightly sand it with some fine grit sandpaper, just to get rid of any tiny lumps. Once you finish sanding, briefly run it under water to seal the surface of the clay and to get rid of any loose clay dust. I papier-mache'd the last 3 small balloons, which will be the heads, and I attached it with clay. I could have added the heads earlier when I was connecting the body parts together, but it doesn't really matter which way you do it. At this point I decided I wanted the body to be a little bit more joined, so I added some more clay. To add the arms, cut a piece of thin wire using a sharp pointy object, make a hole in the snowman and then thread the wire through. Add the clay around the wire, making the arms a little bit thinner than you want them to be. I wanted one of my snowmen to hold a beer glass, so I left a bit of wire sticking out. While the arms are drying, you can add the facial features. You can make the eyes and nose at this point as well, but I decided to leave this out because I wanted to make it out of polymer clay just to give it a different texture. Once the arms have dried overnight, you can then add more clay to them to sculpt them and get them in the right shape that you want. Once my snowmen had dried, I then painted them with acrylic paint. I wanted to give them a bit of an old rustic look, so I painted the first coat in beige and then added brown blotches. When the brown blotches had completely dried, I went over them with a thin layer of off-white paint. I kept painting over them until they were just peeking through. I also made sure some of the beige undercoat was showing. Using some of the beige paint, I shaded some areas which I wanted darker. I took the beer off a keyring and attached it to my snowman. I sculpted the eyes and the nose using this polymer clay. Polymer clay is different to the air dry clay. It has more of a plasticky texture and you have to put it in the oven to harden it. I'll put a list of the brands that I use in the description box below. When I'm happy with the shape of my eyes and nose, I placed it on some baking paper and then put it in the oven. Once it's done hardening in the oven, I just brush the nose with some brown eyeshadow so the eyeshadow gets into the cracks, making it look more like a carrot. I made a little hole for the wire to go through, and then with a bit of super glue attaching the nose and the eyes. I think the snowman looks fantastic at this point, but if you want to make it have a more snow-like texture, you can use Epsom salt and some white glitter. Whether you'd like to do this or not, make sure you seal the paint with some Mod Podge. This adds a nice layer of protection to your snowman. Before the Mod Podge dries, sprinkle on your Epsom salt and glitter. Once the Mod Podge has dried, add another layer of Mod Podge to seal in the salt and the glitter. Repeat this process until you get the desired snowy effect. I'll leave a link below to where you can get these garlands and these cute birds, which you can attach using super glue or hot glue. And that's it! I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'm wishing you a very Merry Christmas!